Hey, this is a video of my testimony. I do have notes next to the phone just so I don't lose track or lose focus. Para los que quieren escucharlo en español, voy a hacer un video separado, obviamente explicando lo que expliqué en este video, pero en español. And I'm just gonna go into it. So my name's Carlos Javier. Everybody calls me CJ. 27 years old. Was born in Puerto Rico, raised in Chicago, and growing up, I never went to church. Never went to church. My parents never took me. I don't believe we even owned a Bible in our house, but I did grow up believing that us as a family, we were Christians. Never understanding what that meant until just recently. So, never went to church, never read the Bible. I drank and smoked starting when I was about 14, 15 years old. And since then, that was my life. Since that moment, that has been my life. I was a huge stoner, smoked my way through high school, smoked my way through college. I loved to party, loved to drank almost every Friday and Saturday. I did shrooms probably about 4 or 5 times, did acid twice. I did meth once, horrible. Yeah, and ever since I was little, I've dealt with depression. I was always depressed. Now looking back, I never understood why I was depressed, but I knew I was for sure depressed. I was self-harming, barely ate, barely slept. I remember I went to the doctor once, tell him what I was feeling. They put me on antidepressants. The first antidepressants they put me on, it was horrible in the sense that it worked in the sense that I wasn't depressed anymore. After about like 2 or 3 months of taking them, I wasn't depressed anymore, but I also didn't feel happiness. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything. It was basically, I felt like I wasn't living life. I felt like I was just existing. Like I was just a walking zombie. And I was like, no, I'm not taking these no more. Went to my doctor. They put me on other antidepressants, which gave me bad side effects. One of the side effects was this ringing in my ear that didn't go away until months after I stopped taking them. And one of the side effects was also strange dreams. And I believed that I was gonna start dreaming about unicorns, leprechauns, like just random stuff, but it was the complete opposite of that. It was strange dreams in the sense where I was getting my dreams and my memories, I was getting my dreams and reality confused. I was getting them switched up. And that's how I lived my life while I was taking those antidepressants. I lived confused and just like a blur. I had like this blur in my mind. And I went back to my doctor and he was like, oh, you know, everybody's different. We just have to find the right medication for you. And I was like, no, I'm not your experiment. I'm not a lab rat. Like I'm done. Like I don't want to take any more antidepressants. I'm good. I'll just figure it out. I started getting into meditation, yoga, different ways to cope with it. I started going to the gym a little, but anyways, I'm getting off topic. So I'm gonna basically stay my relationship that I've had with God growing up. So like I said, never went to church, never have read the Bible, but I always knew there was a higher power. I always knew there was something more. I called it God, not knowing who God was, but I was one of those people that always considered myself spiritual and not religious. I was into crystals. I loved reading about different religions. And I even took a few classes of religion in college. Yeah, and I would pray to God, not in the traditional sense of getting on my knees with my hands together and like praying like, dear God. I would just literally just talk to God in the same sense that I'm talking to you guys right now. So I would talk to God and I never heard anything, never felt anything. And so I never knew if he was there. And I remember one time I was so depressed and I was crying hysterically. And I remember I took a whole bunch of pills and my mom had to take me to the hospital. And At the hospital, it got better. Once I left the hospital, it got better. And I remember like 2, 3 days later, after I had gotten back from the hospital, I remember I was talking to God. I was talking to God and I was basically saying how I was tired of being depressed and I wanted Him to help me get rid of my depression. And it never happened. It never happened. I still dealt with depression. And I remember, since I never got what I wanted, he never got rid of my depression, I remember I became atheist for about a good year. For about a good year, maybe 2 years, no more than 2 years. I was atheist, and then I became agnostic. And yeah, that was around when I was in high school. I went to college, and I moved back to Puerto Rico. And when I came back here to Chicago from Puerto Rico, I remember everything was good. I had found a boyfriend because I was bisexual. I found a boyfriend, and it was literally like the guy of my dreams. Like, it was literally everything that I had asked for and everything I had wanted. And everything was good for about 6 months. Then he got super jealous. I ended up breaking up with him, kicking him out of my apartment. And I remember around that time, I was so happy. I was so happy just being alone in my apartment, and I was so grateful for everything that I had. I had a good paying job. And mind you, during this time, I'm still praying to God or talking to God. So almost every day, just talking to Him. And yeah, so like I was saying, I had my own apartment. I had a good paying job. My kitchen, my cabinets were all full of food. Like, I had money in my account. I was not missing anything in my life. I was so happy and so grateful for everything. And I remember I would give God thanks every single day. And giving Him thanks and talking to Him every day. I was also during that time reading more about different religions, studying more about different religions. And I had already taken classes in college, but I was reading specifically on the Yoruban religion and also the Catholic religion, because those are where my roots are tied to. If anybody knows about Puerto Rican DNA and ancestry, we are mixed of Spanish Catholicism mixed with the native Tainos, which are the native Puerto Rican indigenous peoples, and African Yoruban, mostly from Nigeria and Congo. So I was specifically reading about those two religions, learning about the Orishas, learning about the saints. And my great-grandfather, my biological great-grandfather, was Hijo. He was a son of Elegua, which is an Orisha in Yoruban culture, in Santeria. And I don't know, I just felt like I had those two connections, that were two connections with those two specific religions, that I started reading more about them. And I remember I was still praying to God and talking to Him every day. And I remember one day I was in my apartment. And I had like this emptiness inside of me, like this hole. And I remember, even though I had money in my account, even though I had a good paying job, food in my cabinets, like everything was good. I was single, but I was happy. I was good. Or I thought I was happy. And I remember I was in my apartment pacing back and forth, and I just felt this emptiness inside me. And I remember I was feeling so tired. I was so tired of feeling like something was missing from my life. Like, I was missing something from my life. Oh, and I was tired of thinking, maybe if I read this book, maybe if I study this religion, maybe if I go to college, maybe if I get away from Chicago, maybe if I move back to Puerto Rico, maybe if I find the man of my dreams, maybe if all these different things. I remember thinking, I was so tired. I was so tired of feeling like I was missing something, and then getting the thing that I felt like I was missing and still feeling like I was missing something. And I remember I was pacing back and forth in my apartment, and I was so exhausted, so tired of that feeling, that I was crying. I was crying and screaming, and from the top of my lungs, I was so tired and screaming and crying. And I talked to God again. I begged to God. I was like, please, I don't want to be tied to any more drugs, to any more alcohol, to any more, not even food, medication, nothing. I didn't want to be tied to anything. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be, well, I'm in Aquarius. I've always been free spirited. I literally have on my neck here, I have free spirited tattooed on me with the Aquarius zodiac sign. So I was crying and yelling to God, and I remember towards the end of my little tantrum, I was screaming and crying, and I literally screamed. I was like, talk to me, talk to me. Like, I said, damn it, but in my head, I was feeling it, and I didn't say it out of respect to God, but I felt it. I felt it, and it was in my head. I was like, talk to me, damn it. Like, I was tired of reading. I was tired of studying. I was tired of everything. I was just tired of life. And I remember I screamed at the top of my lungs. I was like, talk to me, talk to me. Like, give me something. And I remember I was in my living room on my knees when I said that, when I screamed. And it was probably not even a minute later that I laid down, and I fell asleep. I fell asleep into a deep sleep, and I remember that it felt like when you were a little kid, and I don't know if you guys experienced this, but when you were a little kid and you got in trouble and your parents just smacked you and hit you and just hit you and hit you, and you were crying and you got so exhausted from crying that you ended up falling asleep. That's how I felt. That's how I felt. So after crying and begging to God and telling him that I was exhausted and I needed something, like some sign from him, I fell asleep. And I remember it was the strangest thing. I remember when I woke up, that feeling was gone. That feeling of having an emptiness inside of me was gone. It was completely gone. It was so weird. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was gone. It was completely gone. And I remember I was even more grateful than before. On top of being grateful for having my family, having two parents that grew up with me, who raised me, which a lot of people don't have. And on top of being grateful for everything I already had, I was even more grateful. And I remember thanking God. I was thanking God almost every day, like, thank you, thank you. And I kept thinking, oh, maybe it's just that I was exhausted and I just woke up feeling better. Maybe it'll go away tomorrow, but it didn't. I kept on thinking maybe that emptiness will come back, and it didn't. And I was just so grateful, and I thanked him every single day. And about 3 to 5 days after I woke up and that feeling was gone. Oh, and mind you, when I woke up and that feeling was gone, I threw out the marijuana I had. I threw out the alcohol that I had, not because I felt like I needed to. It was more because I knew, I was 100% sure that from that moment on, I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need those things anymore. And yeah, so 3 to 5 days after I woke up with that feeling of the emptiness being gone, and thanking God every single day after that, like 3 to 5 days later, I had a dream. And this is where I'm starting to really get into my testimony. So I had a dream that I was at the beach, right? I was at the beach, and it was a crowded beach. It was a beach with a bunch of people. It was sunny outside, and I had an Asian girlfriend. And maybe this is a little bit of importance, but in Chicago, I lived in Chinatown. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the dream, but anyways, I had an Asian girlfriend, and we were at the beach just chilling, just hanging out, and just having a good time. And then out of nowhere, well, first I have to describe the beach. So the beach was sunny outside. It was a lot of people, and it had a bridge going over the beach, like I guess from the pavement, from the sidewalk of where people start coming in, and it had a bridge going over the beach. And there was a gate under the bridge. There was a gate, but surrounding the beach. So basically, you couldn't go to the deep. You couldn't go anywhere else. You had to go from where you entered. And I remember we were having a good time, and out of nowhere, everybody at the beach just turned around at me, just turned and looked at me, and their eyes, their pupils got big. It's not like in the movies that when you see an evil entity that all their eyes turn black. It was just that their pupil turned black, like so big that there were no color around the eyes. It was just black. And I remember I felt scared. And I was so scared, and I started walking away from the crowd and everything. And then everybody was still looking at me, still turned to look at me. And then the more I walked away, they were following me. They were like slowly walking with me, like following me. And I remember thinking like, oh no, this is wrong, like something's wrong. And then I started running. And then they started running after me. Everybody at the beach. So imagine everybody at the beach just all of a sudden at the same moment turns to look at you, and their pupils turn big. And obviously I start running, and then they start running after me. And I'm like, well, there's nowhere to run, because where you enter from, it's blocked by all these people. Not all of them, but majority of people. There was no way I was gonna get through there. So I started running in the water. And they're obviously chasing after me, and I started running in the water, and then I start to swim underwater. And no way, before that, once I started running, I looked up, and you could see helicopters with guns. And they were also like people with guns in the helicopters, and they were also aiming to shoot at me. So it's not just everybody at the beach that turned and started chasing me. It's the helicopters too that were after me. So I started going in the water to get away, and I started swimming, and I was touching the ground of the floor. I was going towards the deep, but I was touching the ground floor, the sea, the ocean floor. So I had the mentality, I was thinking, oh, maybe if I stay on the floor to the bottom of the ocean and I keep swimming under all the water, the helicopters won't be able to see me. So I kept swimming, and I remember for the first time ever in my life, I was able to breathe underwater. And I was like, whoa, this is different. Like it felt good. I was like, oh, I could breathe underwater. So I started breathing and touching the floor and just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. But eventually I got tired of swimming. So I got out of the water. And everybody that was once chasing me, they were like looking around, like trying to see if they could find me, looking around. And once I started running on the sands, once I got out of the water and I started running again, everybody turned to me again, and they started running after me again too. So I just kept running, and I was getting tired, obviously, because it's the I don't know if you've ever ran on sand, on beach sand, like it gets tiring after a while. So, and I was already tired of swimming, so I was running, and then I turn around to see how far I've gotten, or to see how close they've gotten. So I was running, and I turn around, and when I turn around, there's this African tribe, probably about like seven of them, and they were one behind the other, in the sense of like there was a woman in front of the African tribe. Um, and there was a woman in front, and then two behind her, and then three behind them, and then four behind them. Like that's how they were standing. That's how they were grouped, and they were not completely exposed, not completely naked, but they had just their private parts covered with like a brown beigeish cloth. But they were African. They were African. And I remember the woman, I'm assuming she was the leader. It was the woman in front. It was a woman in front, and she had a spear, like a long spear. And all of the people who were the African tribe, all of them, they had like glowing eyes, not in the sense of, they didn't have pupils, and not their all of their eyes weren't glowing. It was just the circle, just the eye, the circle part of the eye. There was no pupil. It literally looked like little suns, like the sun, just little, and in their eyes, and it was glowing like the sun, like it was just glowing. And the lady in front, she talks to me, but when she's talking to me, she's not moving her lips. Like she's talking to me like telepathically, like she's talking, like we're exchanging thoughts. And she's telling me like, oh, why are you running from us? We're here to help you. And I explained to her, again with my thoughts, I explained to her, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you guys were behind me. I was just running from everybody because I was scared. I explained to her the situation. I'm just like, I'm just trying to get away. I was running from everybody. I didn't notice you guys. And then she was like, oh, there's no need to run anymore. She tells me with her mind. She tells me, oh, there's no need to run anymore. We're here to help you. Like everything's gonna be okay. And she touches me with the staff that she's holding. She touches the front of my forehead with it. And then I blink. And when I open my eyes again, I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm no longer in the danger zone, like inside and trapped inside the beach, inside that part of the beach. And yeah, I'm on the other side of the fence now. And I'm seeing my Asian girlfriend on the other side. And part of me feels like this sadness, for leaving her behind, but I also felt secure. I also felt safe, like relieved that I was safe. And I remember I waved to her, and she waved back, and then I blew her a kiss, like saying goodbye. I blew her a kiss, and she blew me one back. And then I started walking the other direction. And I'm walking, and you could tell that everybody who was on the other side of the fence, they didn't see me. They couldn't see me on the other side, on the safe side. So I'm walking, and and this part of the beach, it wasn't completely sand. It had rocks, like on the shore. So even though I'm walking, I'm not walking normally. I'm like walking, but also trying to keep my balance. And while I'm walking on the rocks, and from a distance, I see a man. From a distance, I don't even know the distance. I would say it was a good distance. He looked kind of small, but I noticed it's a man. So, and the man's fishing. He's fishing, he has his reel style, and he's just there alone, calmly, just fishing. And I'm walking towards him, trying to keep balance, walking towards him. And I see all these like beautiful fish, like the water, the environment, everything is like bright. And I'm seeing the different colors of fish, the different kinds of fish, and they're all just chilling there. And I'm walking towards the man, and once I get to him, I kind of like fall, like I trip over a rock that I was trying to keep balance on. I fall, like not directly in front of him, but a good distance, and I fall to my knees, and I look up, and I'm like kind of panicking, and he's like, oh, what's wrong? And Mind you, this man that was fishing by himself, he looked exactly like my dad. He looked exactly like my dad, which my dad looks like me, just older. But except this man, he looked just like my dad, but he was a little bit taller. He didn't have a beer belly. He didn't have a beer belly. He was a little bit taller, a little bit like more bulked, and he had blue eyes, and a little bit, his hair was a little bit more blonde than my dad's. And my dad doesn't have blue eyes either. But yeah, that's how I would describe this man. And he was like, "What's wrong?" And then I explained to him the situation, how like everybody was trying to get me, everybody was trying to kill me, and that like I'm just freaking out. And he's like, he's talking to me in English and in Spanish. And when he speaks in English, it's perfect English, but when he speaks in Spanish, it's perfect Spanish. Like his Spanish sounded like the Puerto Rican accent of Spanish, but it sounded even more Puerto Rican than the Puerto Rican Spanish we know today, the Puerto Rican accent we know today. It sounded more indigenous. So he's talking to me, we're talking back and forth. He's actually moving his lips. He's not talking to me telepathically. But I'm explaining to him everything, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry. Everything's gonna be okay. Like you're safe here. You're safe here, and everything's gonna be okay. You don't have to worry anymore." And I remember when he told me that, I felt like this like I could trust him. Like I believed every word he told me. And I remember feeling so secure, so safe, and so happy. So safe and happy. And he tells me, he's like, "Oh, everything's gonna be fine, just follow me." And he starts walking, he keeps walking. And I'm following after him, still trying to keep my balance while walking on the rocks, even though he's walking perfectly fine. And I'm following him. And after about like a minute or two of walking, I asked him in Spanish, "Oh, where are we going? Where are we going?" And he tells me in Spanish, "Oh, we're going to the island of the semis." And when he said that, my body, like my whole being, like everything in me, just, I felt this wave of unconditional love, of unconditional safety. Like I don't even know how to explain. I've never in my life, never experienced something like that. Not in my dreams, not in this world. I've never experienced a feeling of love or happiness or security like that ever in my life. And then I start crying in my dream. I start crying, like hysterically crying from so much emotion, positive emotion, that I start crying in my dream. And he asked me in Spanish, he's like, why are you crying? And I was like, "Cause you said we're going to the island of the semis." And he says, "Yeah, look." And then he points to the rocks that I was stumbling, like trying to walk on. And he points to the rocks that is like near the shore of the water, like under the water, but in the shore. And I look, and it has the drawings. I don't know how it's called in English, but it has the drawings of the indigenous people from Puerto Rico. And I don't know if you guys know, but the Zemis are the gods of the indigenous Puerto Ricans. Supposedly, allegedly, they're the gods of the indigenous Puerto Ricans. And when he says, "Look," and then I see the drawings on the rocks, like the carvings on the rocks, and they're in color. And then when I see them, I felt like another wave of emotion, another wave of happiness, another wave of security. It was undescribable, unbelievable. Those are like, words can't even put into it the feeling that I was experiencing. And then he asked me, he's like, "But what's wrong? Why are you crying?" And then I told him, "Oh, supposedly those are the gods of my people, of my ancestors." And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Oh, well, welcome home. Welcome home." And I felt another wave of emotion, another wave of happiness, of security. And while I'm crying in my dream, like hysterically crying from so much emotion, once he said that, he looks at me after he puts his hand on my shoulder, and I tell him, oh, those are the gods of my people, and he says, welcome home. He puts his hand down from my shoulder, and I'm still crying. I'm still crying and crying and crying. And he looks at me like up and down, and like kind of analyzing me. Like he's kind of like, and then he's looking me up and down, and then he says, CJ? Like, and I felt like I felt like an even more wave of emotion, like another wave of emotion. And it felt like we knew each other, but he just hasn't seen me in a really, really long time. And like how maybe in the beginning he just didn't recognize me until I started crying from so much emotion. And he asked me, he's like, CJ? And then I took a deep breath from so much crying. I took a deep breath in just so I can tell him like, yeah, it's me, it's me. And I took a deep breath in, and when I was going to say yes, I woke up before I even got the chance to say yes. Like to say yes, it's me. Like I woke up, and then when I woke up, I was crying hysterically. But when I had woken up, I still felt that emotion, but my pillow was wet. My pillow was wet, or in other words, I was crying in my sleep. And that has never happened to me ever in my whole life. Ever in my whole life. I was crying in my sleep, and I remember I was crying hysterically from, not because I was sad or anything. It was the opposite of why I was initially crying when I prayed to God. But I was crying from so much happiness. And I remember I was crying for about 45 minutes, almost an hour after I woke up. And I remember I was trying to convince myself to stop crying. And I was trying to convince myself like, oh, it's just a dream, it's fine. But the emotion I felt, like I have never experienced something so vivid in my life or in any other dream, that it was hard to convince myself. I didn't convince myself. I remember feeling so happy, but also feeling like a yearning, like I wanted to go back. And I remember feeling like, damn, I didn't even get to see the island, to see where he was taking me. And I remember feeling so happy, yet kind of like nostalgic, kind of like a yearning to go back. But I was still so grateful. So grateful. And I remember thanking God. I remember feeling so happy. And I knew from that moment on, that dream was so strong that I knew from that moment on, my life would never be the same. I feel like I can get Alzheimer's and I would still remember that dream. Like there's no way, there's no chance, it's just not a possibility for me to forget something like that. Or for me to just ignore it. So I go on my life as usual. Obviously, I had stopped drinking and stopped smoking. And I remember I still kept talking to God every day, even more now, because I had experienced something that I had never experienced before. That I remember I was talking to him even more every single day. And I remember I had another dream about 2 weeks later. Or no, that's a lie. It was the 1 week later. Another week later, I had another dream. Because, mind you, I'm never able to control my dreams, because to me, they're just dreams. So I've had a whole bunch of dreams in my life, but I was never able to control them until that one dream where I was able to breathe underwater. So I had another dream about a week later after that one. About a week later, I had another dream where I was in my apartment, and my neighbor was in my apartment. My neighbor, he was an Asian neighbor. Because I live in Chinatown, so he was an Asian neighbor, and he was in my apartment, and we were just talking. I forgot what we were talking about. I don't remember the details because, you know, you wake up and you forget a lot of details of your dreams. But I'm in the dream and I'm kind of like in my living room and in between my living room and my kitchen, and we're just talking. And he goes behind me. He goes behind me and he reaches his arms like towards my, like around my front, and he starts touching my private parts. And so he's going like this. He's going like this in front of me and he's touching my private parts. And for the first time, like since I'm able to control my dreams now, I tell him, I move his hands away. I grab my hands, I go like this. I move his hands away and I say no. I say no. And then the look on my neighbor's face, mind you, my neighbor, I've never talked to him ever in my life. We don't have any type of relationship. We don't have any type of communication. The only communication we've had probably in the year that I've been living there is just saying hi and bye, because he barely knows English. So it's just him saying hi and bye and me saying hi and bye like on my way to work or coming home from work, and he happens to be outside. And that was probably a total of like 3-4 times. So I tell him no and I push his hands back, and the look on his face, he looked so shocked, like he was not expecting that response. And it's a look of pure shock and pure like not expecting that he quickly runs to my bathroom. Closes the door, and you could see the light from the lining of my door. So, you know, he's in the bathroom, and the bathroom was open before with the lights off. So you could see the lining of the lights, and he takes a while in there. And I'm just like, why is he using my bathroom? He lives next door. Like, he can go use his own bathroom. Like, he can go to his own apartment. He lives literally right there, like 2 feet away. So I go towards the door to like knock on it to tell him to get out, because I was already feeling uncomfortable. And I was gonna knock on the door, but then I hear him talking. And I put my ear towards the door, and I'm assuming he was talking on the phone, because who else is gonna be in my bathroom? Nobody was there before. So I'm assuming he's talking on the phone. And I put my ear to the door to listen, and I hear him saying, "Oh, I think he's waking up." And I was still dead asleep. I knew I wasn't waking up from my dream. So that must have meant that he was referring to waking up like mentally, like spiritually. And he was like, "Oh, I think he's waking up." And I start freaking out. I'm just like, what the hell? And then I grab my hand to knock on the door to like, cause I was already getting really, really bothered, and I was gonna bang on the door to tell him to get out, to leave. And as soon as I was about to bang on the door, I woke up from my dream. And I kid you not even, I would say probably a month, no more than 2 months later, my neighbor next door moved. He ended up moving. And the only reason why I found out, I never saw him move. I never saw him again after that dream. Nothing. So the only reason why I found out is because I paid my landlord in cash. And when I went to pay the next month's rent, my landlord asked me if I knew anybody who wanted to move in next door, because my neighbor had moved out. So that was just something really, really, really creepy. Really creepy that had to do with my dream. And I'm still praying to God during this whole time, talking to him. And then about another week later, I was revealed the fight between the war between good and evil. In my dream, I wasn't literally shown it like in my dream, I wasn't shown it, like it wasn't so much seen. It was more like a thought process. It was more like I was shown in the sense like I was told in my dreams, I'm assuming by beings, I don't know. So I was shown the war between good and evil, and how there was no in between. Like everything was either good or evil. And I was shown how in the beginning, when that dream process was basically aligning science with religion. And I was shown the war between good and evil, and how in the beginning that God spoke into existence. Like he spoke, and the vibrations from his voice is what causes, like everything is still vibrating since the beginning of time, because that's how strong the vibrations from his voice is. Because when we talk, our vibrations, our vocal cords, our vibrations, like that's how we hear. And that's how, and then they showed me how everything is moving. Like basically how science says that everything's moving is because of God. When he spoke, that everything is still, it's not done vibrating, it's not done moving. So his breath is what moves everything, and then the vibrations is what vibrates everything. It's like what moves everything. Like, let me explain. So basically how like solids are low vibrational. That's why they're solid, because you barely see them moving. And then they show me how gases were high vibrational. That's why you can't see them. And liquids are like in the middle. Liquids are like in the middle. They're not low, but they're not high vibrational either. And for anybody who knows, we're mostly water. So basically that was what they showed me, the war between good and evil. And I remember when I woke up, there was more details that I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but when I woke up, I was able to see the good and evil in everything. In everything. Not literally see it, but it was more a state of knowing. Like I was on my way to work. I had to call off that day because I was on my way to work. I take the train to work, so I was walking to the train station, and every single person I walked by, I can tell if they were good or not. I can tell if they were on good terms with God. I can tell if, I just knew. It was a state of knowing. I just knew. Like I can tell if they had demons to deal with, or if they had issues, or if they were all right, like if they were good. And I remember I had to call off of work because I was freaking out. I literally felt like I was going insane. And I work at a hotel. So imagine me checking people in. I work at front desk, so dealing with people, meeting new people every single day, that was gonna be too much emotion for me, like too much. So I ended up calling off of work. And that dream really changed my perspective of everything, in the sense of I was more sensitive to everything, to music. I couldn't listen to the same music anymore. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It was more because the music just rubbed me the wrong way. It gave me like bad vibes. Scary movies. I used to love watching scary movies. I loved horror movies. I couldn't watch scary movies anymore. They completely ruined my mood. Yeah, that dream basically changed my life as well. And then I kept praying to God even more now, because at this point I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out, thinking I'm going insane. And I'm still praying to God, still talking to him every day. And then another week later, I have a dream where there was a raven. I forgot the raven's name. It started with a P. I'm not sure if it was Peter or Paul, but it was some name with a P. And it was a raven, a bird. And he was showing me all these different types of dreams. All these different types of memories that I've had that I forgot. That I thought I forgot, that I never knew were inside of me. But the raven was basically showing me like all these beautiful memories. Like small things, but things that were beautiful that added up. Like, for example, he was like, look at this. And then he would show me a memory of like my dad coming home from work when I was little and me hiding behind the door and jumping on his back, and just memories of me being in Puerto Rico, and just random beautiful dreams. I mean, memories, sorry, beautiful memories. And yeah, he was just like, show, like, oh, look at this. Remember this? Oh, well, what about this? So I'm just seeing all these beautiful memories. And towards the end of that dream, we're like at a park. I'm at the park with the Raven. And he tells me, he's like, oh, where you're going to next, I'm not gonna be able to go with you, but don't worry, because everything's gonna be okay. And I'm thinking, I'm like, what? And then I tell him, I'm like, what do you mean? Why can't you come with me? Like, you're flying, you're a bird, just come with me. So he's like, no, I'm not able to. I can't go with you, but just remember, don't panic. I like, everything's gonna be fine. So I start slowly like going back to where I'm on my back laying, but floating. And then I start going up, and he's like following me, flying, following me. And then I remember feeling so sad, like I wanted him to come with me. And I'm just like, but you're flying, you see, just come with me. And he's like, no, I can't. So I'm floating and floating and floating. And by the time I get so high that there's a point where he can't fly any higher. And he's like, just remember what I said, don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. So I didn't feel scared. I just felt more sad than anything, because I remember I wanted him to come with me. And I remember at one point I even grabbed him. And I held him close, the bird, the Raven. I hold him close. And I don't know how, but he slipped out of my hands. And he's like, no, I can't. And so I'm floating and floating and floating to the point where I'm in space. And I just felt so calm and so, like he said, like everything was gonna be okay. That's how I felt. So I'm floating and floating and floating, and I'm in the space, in the galaxies already. And then I start floating more until the point where I wake up. And I took that as a sign, as when he said he couldn't come with me, as he meant he couldn't come with me to this world, but that everything was going to be okay. And that's how I took it, but I don't know. So then about 2 weeks later after that dream, mind you, my relationship with God, even though I don't know, I never read the Bible, never went to church, my relationship with God at this point is stronger than ever. I'm still talking to him every day, still praying. And then about 2 weeks later, I have another dream. Where I'm in Puerto Rico. I'm at my grandparents' house. And it's daylight. It's during the day. And out of nowhere, all electricity goes out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And then there was like a news broadcast, like a kind of like those blue screen alerts that there's like a national emergency type of thing. So that goes on on television, which the television is the only thing that has electricity. And then I'm calling, I grab my phone to call my parents to see if they're experiencing the same thing, but there's no electricity, there's no nothing. So then I go outside to see what's going on, and everything's normal. But then one of the African tribe members that was in that first dream I had mentioned, not the same leader, the woman that was in front, it was one that was standing behind her, and it was a male. So he pops up behind me, and he says, I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, the sun is always shining. And I look up, and the sun is shining, but the sky, everything is glitching. everything, like the sky, everything is glitching. Everything is glitching. And then, like the infrared lights, when like people with guns with the red lights so they can aim, that popped up on the screen like red lights, and one by one they all popped up, and they started forming in the sky like the shape of the countries and the countries and the continents. And after one by one, after they completed like the countries and everything, and the sky was just glitching, everything except the sun was like glitching. And after the African tribe member told me like, oh, like everything, the sun is always shining. And I was like, and I saw that, and then I'm like, what do you mean? And then he tells me, he's like, come on, CJ, you knew this, like you've always known this, the sun is always shining. And then I'm just like, what? But I didn't feel fear, I didn't feel scared. I still felt like everything was gonna be okay. But I knew, like, even though the tribe member didn't tell me, I knew that it was the end of the world, and that they were getting rid of night. They were getting rid of darkness. Like everything like was glitching, and that from now on the sun was gonna shine 24/7. That's how I took it. And he was just like, oh, come on, you've been knowing this. Like the sun is always shining. And then I'm just like, huh. I'm like, that's right, I have always known that. And that I took that dream to mean like that we're in a sort of a simulation, that there really is no nighttime, and that behind the nighttime, like when it's night and you see the stars, that the stars are really holes in the simulation, and that the sun is behind that simulation that projects the darkness, which is really the sun is behind that, and that's holes in that part of the simulation, that the sun is shining through those holes, and that's what we perceive to be stars. That's how I took it, but I really don't know. And then I ended up waking up from that dream. And then I'm still praying, faith stronger than ever. And then 2 weeks after that dream, I have a dream where I'm in my elementary school. I don't know why, but I'm in my elementary school, and the gym. I'm at the gym, and the gym is just an open space, like a basketball court, like. And I remember there were a whole bunch of kids, like probably like 10, 20 kids. No, I would say like 15, 20 kids, and like little kids, like 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And I remember they all had names of different angels. Like they all had angel names. And we were all just playing, having fun. I was the only adult, and we were just all playing and having fun. And I remember I felt this love for them. I felt like I was their leader, like I was their I don't even know how to explain it. I knew that I was there to take care of them. I knew that I was there to protect them. And yeah, that was basically that dream. It was just a strange dream that I had, that we were all just playing and having fun, and all the angels were like playing with each other, like teasing each other, and they had angel names. They all had angel names. So even though I've never read the Bible, I knew that they were angels, that they had angel names, because shows like Supernatural, movies, like you get to know like Michael, Gabriel, like you get to know the basic names. And yeah, so then 2 weeks later after that dream, well, I'm still praying and talking to God every day. 2 weeks after that dream, I dreamed that I'm in this white place. There's no, like, everything's white. There's no sofa, there's no TV, there's no structure. It's just white. Everything's white. There's no walls. It's like an infinite whiteness. That's the best way I can describe it. Like just an infinite whiteness. And I remember another African tribe member showed up. Not the leader from the first one, but not the same member from the second dream that showed up, that had a tribe member in it. It was another one, which was also female, but older. older, like probably in their 40s they look like. But anyways, 40s, 50s, but she had a cane. And she pops up and and I'm telling her, hey, like, hey, what are we doing here? And she's like, oh, I have somebody who's dying to meet you. Like, I have somebody who wants to meet you. And when she says that, a little kid, probably like 4 or 5 years old, I would say 5 years old, a little kid pops up behind her, like, not pops up, but she had like a robe kind of, or like a dress robe kind of, and he like pops his head from the side, like between, like, the kid is probably like knee high from the African tribe member, and he pops his head over, kind of like he's shy, and he's not sure if he wants to approach me or not. And I remember I go down, I go down, not on my knees, but I hunch down. So I hunch down, so I'm eye level with him, and I'm just like, hey, what's your name? And the African tribe member tells me, oh, they never gave him a name. They never gave him a name. And then I'm just like, oh, okay, well, how old are you? And then he says 5, right? I'm not sure if he said 4 or 5, but he says, I'm gonna say 5. He says, oh, I'm 5. And then he sits down like crisscross applesauce. He sits down, so then I do the same. And I remember we were just talking and talking and talking. And the African tribe member is just from a distance, like watching everything. Like not a far distance, like kind of close, like 2-3 feet away. And they're just watching, like just observing. And I'm just talking to the kid, getting to know him and everything. And then she comes towards the end and she's like, okay, well, time's up. Like, we gotta go. And I'm just like, oh, you guys gotta go already? Like, I was kind of like really starting to bond with this kid. And she's like, yeah, the time's up, we gotta go. And then the kid grabs the tribe member's arm and they start walking away. And then I say bye, and then he turns back, and the kid turns back, and he waves and he says, bye, Papi. And I'm just like, part of me was so stuck and so shocked, that I start remembering to when I was in college, I was in university, and I had unprotected SCX with my best friend, and she ended up taking a Plan B the next day. And about few months after that moment, I remember her uncle, which is younger than her. He's younger than her, but her uncle he comes to me and he says, oh, that there was a rumor that going around in the family that she had gotten an abortion. Like, basically saying that the Plan B didn't work. I don't think he knew that she took a Plan B, but I started connecting all the dots, and I took it, and that happened about 4 or 5 years before I had that dream. So I took that as that was that kid that I was supposed to have. And the next day when I woke up, I called, we no longer talk like we used to. We don't really hang out, but I called her and I asked her, I was like, oh, did you have an abortion? Did you have a kid? And she was like, oh, how did you know that? And with her saying that confirmed everything I needed to know. And after that moment, she kept denying. I told her about the dream, but I didn't go into detail about it. But she just kept denying. But I know that was that kid. That the fact that at the end of the dream, he left saying, bye, Dad. And yeah, so from that moment on, that's when I got my first Bible. And I started reading, right? I started reading the Bible, and I wanted to share this video, make a video and share it. publicly. I wanted to share it sooner, but as I was reading the Bible, I got to Genesis. Well, I got to Genesis, the first book. But anyways, I was reading Genesis and I got to Joseph. I got to the story about Joseph and how he had dreams. And how he had dreams that he shared, and his brothers were planning on killing him. Just because of the dreams that he had. He had a dream that his brothers would one day kneel to him at begging for needing his help, and that they would one day become servants or something like within those lines. And the brothers were planning on killing him. And so one brother convinced the other of, instead of killing him and having that blood on our hands, let's just sell him to slavery. And I remember thinking like, damn, like people are willing to wish you bad, to wish you death, or